Welcome back. And this is Satan's Trilogy. I am reading book 2 now, chapter 1. And this will be reading 55. I hope you enjoy it. Sit back, relax, and listen to the story unfold. Walking back into the store, Esther stood at the front register, but on the outside of the counter, she spoke in Korean to her father and asked that he allow her to punish the 3 young men that entered the store, but not severely. Father, this is with great disgrace, but I fear 3 cousins of mine are about to attempt to rob us. Please allow me to stop them and to punish them, but in a loving way. Mr. Ho glanced at Esther. He had already sized up the 3 teenagers that had entered the store. He knew that they would approach him in an unlawful way. They had failed to properly conceal their guns, and their demeanor was obviously suspicious. Trusting his daughter, Mr. Ho nodded at Esther and smiled. The 3 young men had made a quick pass through the store, and each had picked up an energy drink from a refrigerator. Placing the drinks on the counter, each pulled back and quickly started to pull out a gun, yelling, "Don't move, or you are dead." Their plans were quickly put aside as Esther grabbed a gun from each of them, placing them on the counter and shoving each youth to the wall close by. They each dropped to the floor as they hit the wall from tremendous force, having been disarmed and easily cast aside. 2 of the youths never touched their weapons as Esther had moved so quickly they were confused as to what had just happened. All 3 youths sat on their butts as Esther stood in front of them. She then started to lecture them. "Bo Chen is my cousin. All 3 of you helped me to move into my home, and yet you are here trying to dishonor my cousin. Mr. Ho is my father. I am very upset, but I know that my cousin will not be pleased." Esther looked at them sternly and spoke to them. "You have 6 hours to explain to your Uncle Chen what you have attempted to do here. I will then speak with him." Esther looked at them in disgrace. "You will have to work hard to remove this disgrace." Esther looked at the clock on the wall and said, "You have 6 hours starting now. Leave." All 3 looked at each other and quickly moved for the door. Esther had turned her back on them, and at the same time Mr. Ho had concealed their weapons. Looking at her father, Esther smiled and said, "I can judge people. They are not bad. I am not certain what or why they did this, but I plan on seeing that they quickly change their path." Smiling, Esther leaned over the counter and kissed her father on the cheek. "I love you, Father. Thanks so much for trusting me." Esther smiled again. "Perhaps I should find them some jobs." Esther quickly headed for the door. "Day is waiting. We are going to have some fun tonight. Day will be with me at my apartment." Esther was out the door. Mr. Ho smiled, went back to work, as he thought to himself, "I love that girl." At the front stoop of the store, Esther heard her name called. "Esther Saint, I was hoping to find you." A tall man in a black suit approached Esther. He had a pleasant smile. "My name is Wilson, but I suspect you already know that." The gentleman smiled. "You've already helped me once, but I would like to ask another favor of you." Day was walking back to the store entrance. "Esther, are we ready yet?" Day was asking rather impatiently. Esther smiled and grabbed her sister. Day, I want you to meet Mr. Wilson. He is a very successful person. He has a favor to ask. The two girls stood at the entrance of the store and looked at the tall man, well-dressed man. He smiled. You see, Esther, I am told you have done some homework on me, and so I did the same on you. I wanted to meet you and ask a favor of your father. He turned to Day. It is wonderful to meet you too, Day-ho. Esther spoke up. Then let's go inside. Esther entered the store first and looked at her father. I didn't get far. We have a guest that wants to ask a favor. By now all three had entered the store. Mr. Ho noticed the well-dressed gentleman with the two girls and spoke to him. How may I help you, sir? Looking directly at Mr. Ho, Wilson spoke up. My name is Wilson. I have a large interest in promoting the W.O.W. matches. I am hoping you will post an advertisement in your store of the next W.O.W. event. Mr. Wilson pulled out a poster from a rather large portfolio and handed it to Mr. Ho. Mr. Ho studied the poster and then looked at his daughters. They looked puzzled and Esther was smiling, so Mr. Ho asked Esther a question. What do you think, Esther? The W.O.W. events are very popular. I am certain many of our customers are following the W.O.W. We could even offer the poster as a prize in a drawing. Many fans of the W.O.W. collect their posters. Esther stopped speaking and waited for her father's response. Well then, Mr. Wilson, we'll display your poster on our community wall. If our customers are interested in the W.O.W., then they will find this interesting. Mr. Wilson smiled. That is wonderful. I want to thank you for this. The W.O.W. is going to grow in popularity, and I believe this will be good for everyone. As Mr. Wilson turned to leave the store, he stopped in front of Esther. I feel that we know each other very well, though we have spoken few words to each other. I want to thank you for helping me purchase the additional W.O.W. stocks. Please accept these tickets to our next event as my way of saying thank you. The next event will be special. You won't want to miss it. And of course, it will be memorable. Wilson looked Esther in the eyes, then added, very memorable. Esther took the tickets and thanked Mr. Wilson, quickly asking, Tell me, do you plan on being there? Mr. Wilson smiled. Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world. As he quickly jumped into a waiting Escalade, he commented, It was wonderful meeting you girls. The car drove off and Day quickly turned to Esther. How many tickets do we have? Day asked excitedly. Without looking, Esther responded, 10 tickets. Day quickly became excited. Oh my gosh, this will be so exciting, and we can take all of our friends. Because of Day's enthusiasm, Esther quickly put aside the idea of raffling the tickets. It was obvious that Day wanted this to be a party night, and one to remember. Esther smiled at Day and watched as she looked over the tickets and screamed, These are front row tickets! Day was jumping up and down as if she had just won the lottery. All right, said Esther. We have to be home for Raven and Riley Grace in just 1 hour. Helen, Chris, and Eve said they'll be by later too. Day had parked by Esther's Ninja. After the two sisters hugged each other, Esther pulled her helmet over her head and watched as Day got into the Mustang. I'll see you at home. Esther quickly started the Ninja and sped off. Day started the Mustang and quickly followed Esther. The girls had started using a couple of Bluetooth earbuds to keep in contact over their phones. Esther had taken Day's iPhone and had her friend John add some customized features. Now the girls easily communicated whenever they wanted to. Day asked Esther, "Hey, I am really hungry. I know you must have something wonderful planned for supper." Esther smiled at herself while riding the ninja down the street. "Yes, I have planned on making pizzas again. We had so much fun the last time, and they were really great. Everything is prepared." Dave became excited. "Esther, please turn on the oven the minute you get in the door. I am starved, and now that I know what's for supper, I can hardly wait." Esther giggled a bit. "Dave, for you, I'll turn on the oven first thing." "All right, I am in the parking space. Just pull in behind me when you get here." Esther quickly went to the apartment and opened the door. Looking about before going inside, everything looked correct. Esther then went inside and turned on the oven. Within a minute, Dave was tapping at the door. Esther had refused to give her a key for security reasons, and Dave didn't question Esther about it. Going to the couch, they flopped onto the left corner and started dialing their best friends. They wanted to share the fact that they had front row seats to the next W.O.W. event. Esther started to pull out the ingredients for making the pizzas from the refrigerator. The countertop was full of dishes filled with various toppings, and the tomato sauce for the pizza was ready as well. Esther had prepared it the night before using imported tomatoes from Italy. The doorbell rang, and Esther went to open it. Dave was still on the phone and watched as Esther went to the door. A few days earlier, Esther's friend had arranged to have a security monitor installed at the front door. A small and undetectable fisheye lens was installed to the right of the door in the hallway so that the entry hallway was visible. Esther did not trust peepholes, and seeing anyone on the other side of the door before opening it was a security plus. Waving her hand in front of the sensor on the wall, a monitor turned on for 60 seconds, unless she chose to turn it off by waving her hand in front of it a second time. Esther could see Raven and Riley Grace in the hallway and quickly opened the door for them. Quickly hugging both, Esther welcomed them inside. Esther grabbed Riley Grace and commented, "You look sharp tonight." Riley Grace had a silk maroon blouse on with a black jean jacket, the back of which had sequins sewn to it in the shape of the W.O.W. logo. Riley Grace also wore black country boots that had an awesome spit shine on them. While holding Riley Grace close to her, Esther turned to Raven and quickly looked her over, then commented on her clothing. "Wow, I can't remember you in country boots." Raven was wearing the same country boots that Riley Grace had on, but 2 sizes larger. Raven also had black jean shorts on. Raven smiled quickly, commenting, "Riley Grace and I are honoring our favorite judge on The Voice tonight by going country. We are fans of Blake Shelton." Esther stood motionless for a few seconds. "Blake Shelton? Isn't he a country singer?" Raven laughed. "Yes, but a damn good-looking country singer." Esther smiled. "I love the boots, especially with the shorts." Raven then changed the subject. "Smells like you already have the oven on." "Oh, yes," said Esther. "Day is nearly starving. She insisted I warm up the oven the minute I got home." "Well, I am starving too," said Raven, and laughing at herself. "So am I. I didn't eat today, knowing that I would have something wonderful tonight," Riley Grace commented as she flopped herself next to Day. Riley Grace loved Day and felt close to her, so without any hesitation she had positioned herself alongside Day. "All right then, let's start making supper," smiled Esther. "It's pizza creation time. Let's see what we can do with our ingredients." Esther smiled as she continued in the kitchen to prepare the pizza dough for stretching. Riley Grace quickly jumped up and went to Esther's side. Esther gave her a ball of pizza dough. "All right, you need to start stretching it out and shaping it," said Esther. Tossing a bit of flour on the countertop, Esther then said to Riley Grace, "Lay the dough on the counter and stretch it with your fingers." "That's very good, Riley Grace." Esther was amazed at how easily Riley Grace had shaped the dough. "Now grab the dough and toss it into the air with a slight spin. This will help it to expand just a bit." Esther stood a half step back and watched Riley Grace toss the dough into the air, expanding the shape into a perfect size for the pans warming up on top of the stove. Esther placed a pan in front of Riley Grace and said, "Wow, that is perfect." Drop the dough into the pan. Esther smiled in admiration at the dough. "That is perfect, Riley Grace." Pulling a few dishes in front of Riley Grace, Esther suggested to Riley Grace, "After you spread the sauce, you can add the toppings. The cheese can come last or first, depending on how you think it should be done." Riley Grace was already building her pizza. The sauce was thick. Riley Grace took a taste from a spoon and then placed the spoon in the sink. "You must taste as you cook," said Riley Grace, while smiling at Esther. Riley Grace loved the taste of the pizza sauce. She started adding toppings until the sauce was nearly covered. Olives, onions, mushrooms, green peppers. Only the cheese remained to be added. Pulling the bowl of mozzarella cheese to her, Riley Grace said, "I don't care for a lot of cheese on my pizza. I like to taste all the flavors without a strong cheese base." Esther smiled at Riley Grace. "Riley Grace, I couldn't have said it better. I totally agree. But that is for my taste and yours. Others choose differently, and that's all right." Esther smiled and turned to open the oven door. "Riley Grace, you are the first to finish, and will most likely be the first to see your masterpiece disappear." Riley Grace took the pizza, now positioned on a large oven stone, and placed it in the oven. As Esther closed the oven door, Riley Grace felt as if Christmas was soon to happen. Day had helped Raven to finish her pizza. Turning to Esther, beaming with pride as she held up the pizza, Esther smiled. "Wow, Raven, that's an awesome pizza. Let's slide it into the oven under Riley Grace's." As Esther shut the oven door as quickly, set the oven timer for 12 minutes, then commented, "We'll take a look in 12 minutes, maybe leave them in just a bit longer. Let me finish mine and we'll put it into the oven too," said Day as she turned to complete her pizza. "I want green and black olives, green and red pepper, and of course onions." Day was tossing the toppings on quickly and generously as she finally reached for the cheese. Smiling to herself, Day declared, "I prefer the cheeses to be the icing on the cake. Certainly not too much, but enough for flavor and texture." Finished, Day turned to Esther, beaming with pride. "That looks fantastic," said Esther. "It seems that we are all naturals in building perfect pizzas." Esther opened the oven door as Day slid the pizza stone onto the lower rack. All four girls stood in the kitchen staring at the oven. Their wait was interrupted when the doorbell rang. "I'll bet that's our girlfriends," said Esther as she went to the door. Riley Grace quickly followed along and watched as Esther waved her hand in front of the hall monitor. Esther could quickly see that the hallway held Eve, Chris, and Helen. Esther quickly opened the door, and everyone gave each other a hug and a kiss on the cheek. Riley Grace had become the youngest of the club, and she held a special place in everyone's heart. All three girls gave Riley Grace a hug and a kiss on the cheek before moving into the kitchen. where they gave Day and Raven hugs and kisses, and then quickly commented on the wonderful smell of the pizzas in the oven. "God," said Helen, "it smells so wonderful. And I wasn't even hungry when I arrived, but now I can't wait to taste these pizzas." Raven looked at Helen. "What's with your hair? I love it." Helen quickly forgot about the pizzas and perked up a bit with some obvious pride. "This is the newest Gothic hairstyle. It is called Blue Sky." Helen's hair had the entire right side bleached and colored a very light sky blue that was in stark contrast with her dyed black Gothic hair. The blue was similar to a popsicle blue. Raven quickly spoke up. "I love it. Would you mind if I had my hair like yours?" Helen laughed. "Of course not. This is popular in New York. You just don't see it around here. We'll be like twins." There was a moment of silence, and then everyone laughed. Helen and Raven could never look like twins, and that was obvious to everyone. But with similar hairstyles, they would certainly look like soulmates. Riley Grace spoke up. "Raven, do you think Dad would let me have a streak of sky blue in my hair?" Raven looked at Riley Grace, smiled with some sisterly love, and said, "I will do my best to see he does." Riley Grace hugged Raven and said, "Can't wait. This will be so awesome. We will look like sisters." Everyone chuckled since Raven and Riley Grace were sisters. At that moment, the oven alarm went off. Esther looked through the oven's door and then opened the door to peek inside. Closing the door for a moment, Esther smiled at everyone. "The pizzas are baked." Opening the door, Esther had grabbed a hot pad to handle the stone platters and carefully pulled each pizza out and placed it onto the top of the oven. "All right," said Esther. "We have to wait 6 minutes and then we can eat. The pizzas must finish cooking and cool down just a bit. Let's get our drinks. I have Coke, water, 7-Up, and Dr. Pepper." Esther opened the refrigerator, and the door was lined with the sodas and water. Everyone took something and then quickly stood back after placing their drinks at the table. Esther ran the pizza slicer across the pizzas and then brought them to the table. First, Riley Grace's pizza was placed on the table. Everyone grabbed one of the slender slices that Esther had carved into it. Then Esther placed Raven's and Day's pizza on the table at the same time. Laughingly, everyone took a slender slice from each pizza and continued to eat. Esther did the same. She took a piece from all 3 pizzas and quickly bit into the one made by Riley Grace. Enjoying the flavors, Esther turned to Riley Grace. "You did very well, Riley Grace. This is absolutely wonderful." Esther smiled at Riley Grace, and the youngest girl at the table just sat there beaming with pride. Riley Grace had found her place in life. With friends and family, she finally felt complete. It was difficult for Riley Grace to relate to others her own age. Riley Grace had a superior intelligence and maturity that created a span of time and space between her and those her age, a distance that was impossible to cross. As everyone finished with their meal, it was time to move. "All right," said Esther. "The night is young. Let's clean up and head for the carnival on the lake." Riley Grace jumped up and yelled, "All right!" Her excitement was obvious to all. Everyone was ready to have fun on the rides and enjoy some of the junk food, especially cotton candy. Riley Grace had been looking forward to this for more than 2 weeks. Raven had also been thinking about how exciting the carnival was and wanted to return. With Day's help and the help of everyone, the kitchen was back in ready condition. Esther looked about and said, Excellent. My kitchen is clean and ready for the next meal. Let's have some fun. Esther looked at Helen and proclaimed, We have to take 2 cars. Can you drive your car and I'll drive my Mustang? Helen responded without any hesitation. Esther, we got here? We'll get there. Esther chuckled. Well then, follow me, and we'll all arrive at the same time, and we'll walk in together. And I believe I'll stop there. That was reading 55. I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, take care and be safe.